Welcome to the Cube series. I was inspired to make these awesome cubes after seeing Crowline's amazing cube pins. They make such amazing art, make sure to check them out. Now I made this series for my first ever art show, along with a bunch of other amazing artists for Strange Cat Toys, and it was so much fun. But everything needed to be small, under 2 inches, and I'm going to make a matching grublet that matches each design and theme. Now I'm just starting off with some Sculpey polymer clay and running it through a pasta machine. These are great if you want nice, even, thin sheets of clay. You can also use an acrylic roller to get the same effect, but the pasta machine is just faster. Now I'm using some Sculpey clay adhesive, also known as Bacon Bond, to stick the clay to the wood. It's the perfect glue. I'm covering almost the entire cube except for the bottom in this clay, and then I'm smoothing everything out so it just looks like one solid cube. Once everything's smoothed out as nicely as I can get it, I'm going to go ahead and bake this. Now after baking, some air was definitely trapped under there. But that's okay, we're going to fix it, ironically using something called It Sculpt. Now this is just a 2-part epoxy you mix together, and then you can use it like any other clay. It air dries and has a limited working time, but it's super strong and sands great. So I'm using it to fill in some of the uneven areas in my cube and fix any cracks or any issues. Now we can get to the fun stuff, which is making what's going to go on top and inside of our cube. We're going to start with making a starfish. Here I'm marking out the arms, and then I'm going to start pulling the clay out to make those triangle shapes for the arms and legs of the starfish. Are they all legs? Are they all arms? I don't even know. So I'm using yellow clay here. You can use whatever color clay you want. And I'm giving the top of the starfish some little definition between the arms, making it more interesting and more lifelike. Here I did a small one and a larger one, and that big one is just too big. We're going to be using this cute little small one. I moved the arms around to give it a more natural look and then made a small chunky version too. Now I'm going to start playing around with some shapes to make some coral. And coral comes in so many shapes, you can really just make it any way you want. Honestly, I'm just making this up. I don't even know if coral really looks like this, but nobody's going to know. The fun thing about art is you can do whatever you want. Here I'm just using a ball stylus to make some cool little indents in the top to give it a little more interest. And here I'm just going to make some leaves or seaweed. I don't know, like I said, I'm making this up. But it all looks good in the end. Now for this seaweed, after I was done putting that line down the middle, I twisted them to give them a more fun shape. And it looks really fun in the end. Here I'm just sanding the heck out of my cube. I really want this as precise and cube-like as I can get it, and that's where sanding comes in. Now you can see it's nice and smooth. And I'm just going to shape this starfish. I'm using tinfoil as a barrier so that my starfish doesn't stick to the polymer clay because it likes to stick to itself. And then I can go ahead and do some detailing. That way, after it's done baking, the starfish can pop right off. Here I'm using some mica powders to give it a really cool finish. And this stuff is so fun to play with, I highly recommend it. You can use so many different colors and it's nice and metallic and shiny. I'm just going over all my different corals with different colors of mica powders, and you can see it gives it a really nice effect. Now after baking, I can just pop my little starfish right off. Since we baked the starfish right onto our cube, it's going to fit perfectly, especially when we turn this into a resin cube. Now for the inside of our cube, we need some seashells. So I'm going to show you how I made them on a much larger scale so it's easier to see. You're just going to take a needle tool and give the seashell those classic lines you see on seashells, going around all sides and then pushing in 2 parallel lines towards the bottom. I use the tool to push into the clay just a little bit, and then I take a nice flat razor blade and cut the bottom off. And that gives us a perfect little shell that you can make in any size. Now I like to use these condiment cups to keep all my tiny pieces together so they don't get lost. Now we're going to move on to our octopus. I always like to look at some references so I get an idea of what I'm trying to make. Sometimes little details that you'll forget will make or break your design. So we're starting off with this oval piece. This is going to be the head of our octopus. You saw before that I measured out equal parts of clay for all the legs, and that's so our legs all come out the same size. You don't want too small of legs mixed in with too big of legs. It's going to look weird. Here I'm just attaching all the legs all around the body. I made sure to figure out how many legs octopus have so that I had the right amount of legs as well. It was a little tricky getting them all to fit, but I made it work. Now I want to blend these legs into the body really well, on the front and the underside of the octopus. When you're working with smaller objects, tools can be really helpful because sometimes your fingers cannot get into all the spaces you need to. That's why I'm using a variety of tools to help me move the clay and blend it in. Once you start blending the legs in, it really starts looking more like an octopus and less like a creepy blob. You can fill in any holes or gaps as you go, and you can see we're getting much more of an octopus look here. I want to set them on top of the cube and start playing with shapes, moving the arms around, seeing what looks good, seeing what I like. And I decided I wanted mine to hold the little fish that he caught. I thought that would be super cute, so I'm positioning the arms correctly. And I'm going to be making some eyes. I'm using some glow Cosclay because I thought that would be a fun effect, so I made some eyeballs and baked them so that I could push them into the head. And that's when I realized they were way too big, and this is hilarious, and that's why I left it in. But it just goes to show you that sometimes your skill is off, and that's okay. I'm using some of that clay adhesive to hold my eyeballs in place. And now we're going to add some of those grumpy brows that octopus have that I love. It gives them so much personality, and it's going to give ours some as well. And here you can see it's starting to look like they're part of the head and not just two balls stuck on it. Now I feel the eyes are a really important part of the octopus, so really take your time, get everything blended nicely. I like to go in with a needle tool and just accentuate those eyes after I'm done blending so that they really pop and look good. Here I'm just adding the siphon on the side of the octopus. Do I know what this does? No, but I'm adding it because it looks cool. I'm going to use a ball stylus to make the end. I know that water comes out of it, so you need a hole. Here I'm just taking my little fish, I got these at Michael's, and I'm painting it blue so it contrasts with our octopus. And here I'm testing out textures. Octopus have amazing texture, so you want to make sure that they have some cool little bumps. And I'm just using this tool all over the body. I started with a bigger ball stylus, but I didn't like the look of it, so I switched to a smaller one. And I'm just detailing the whole body with that texture. And it makes such a huge difference. Here I'm covering our cube in tinfoil again so that the octopus doesn't stick to it while baking. We're going to need them to come off to go on to our resin cube that we're going to be making. And you know I love clay softener. It's going to smooth all the texture together and get rid of any fingerprints or dust. And now after baking, you can see he's nice and matte. We can take that tinfoil off and you can see he fits like a key. It's perfect. And of course you got to add their little pupils. All about the details. I'm going to be using some golden acrylic gold paint just to give the octopus a little bit of a metallic sheen to go with the rest of our metallic details that we made. And then I'm just covering him in a gloss to make him nice and slimy looking. And now we can finally take our cube and make a mold of it. You see it pops right out, and now we have a perfect replica. Now to make this all work, I'm going to be using a technique that I figured out in another YouTube video I did, making resin tea bags, and it's going to help us get the effect we want. I'm making UV resin braces basically so I can suspend the pieces, and I'm using a marker to mark out where I want each piece. And I'm building up the UV resin so I get a little bit of a gap. I'm trying not to use too much so that I can pop this brace off after it's done curing. The brace is only temporary, and you can see how high the seashell is. It's built up on that bump so that I can get some sand so it looks like everything's sitting in sand. And this is what our braces look like inside the mold. Now I'm going to mix up our ocean. I'm going to use a mix of green pigment and blue pigment. I'm using transparent pigments because we know the ocean isn't clear, so we want a little bit of color. I'm adding a tiny bit of very fine glitter to it, of course, because it's me. Now I'm going to fill up the cube most of the way, but not all the way. I'm going to coat all of the pieces in resin before I put them in. This is going to help with bubbles so that bubbles don't get trapped in these pieces when I turn them over and put them in the resin. And here I'm going to finish pouring in the resin, but I'm not going to fill it up entirely, leaving just enough room for that sand layer. Now after curing, we're just going to pop off these braces using some needle nose pliers. And as you can see, they pop right off. I've even been able to reuse these braces too. And for a first try, this came out pretty good, but I knew I could do better. I filled it up a little too high, and in some areas it didn't leave room for the sand, so it wasn't going to look right. I decided to use a faster curing urethane resin and try it all over again. I made new pieces that I liked a lot better and did the whole thing over again. And now we have room for our sand. I took the cube out and made sure that there weren't any pieces of resin that were going to cause me issues, popped it back in, added some resin with some sand and some white pigment to make it more opaque. And you want to use your tools and really get it into all the little cracks. Finished it off with some sand and then let it cure. And you can see that this second try came out exactly like I wanted it to. I have a cute little bubble stuck in my shell that looks like a pearl, so I'm not even mad about that bubble. And now you can see that all that work led up to this, the perfect fit. That's why I had to do all of this resin work. Now I'm going to spray it with some gloss spray and attach the starfish. I'm using some E6000 glue and just carefully gluing it to the outside of the cube. I'm going to go ahead and also add some E6000 to my octopus and glue them right on top. And there you can see he can hold his little fishy prize, and finishing it off with my sticker. Here you can see the matching grublet I made with some extra seashells, and I even made a sand layer for the bottom of the ocean. And I think they make a really cute little pair. Thank you so much for watching this video and watching me make the first cube in my cube series. I can't wait to show you the rest of the designs. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out.